Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. I'm here to talk about building an AI-ready foundation for pharma manufacturing. My name is Matthew Neal. I'm a Senior Solutions Advisor with HiveMQ. HiveMQ is on a mission to turn industrial data into real-time intelligence in action and be the industrial data platform for agentic AI. We have over 200 plus enterprise customers around the world, some of them mentioned here. And our difference is real-time distributed intelligence for the industrial data. We were founded in Germany in 2012, and we have offices around the globe now from there. Sorry, 1 second here. Let me get this correct the way I need it. All right, so you're all feeling the same pressure, but from different seats. On one hand, there's relentless pressure to accelerate your batch release, keep GXP compliance, watertight, never compromise on patient safety. And on the other hand, the networks you run, multiple plants, labs, CMOs, are getting more and more complex, not less. Most of you have already heavily invested in things like MES, LIMS, and historians. But the problem is those systems, that those systems are not wrong. It's just the way that they're stitched together is fragile and highly customized. So your PLCs and SCADA data, SCADA DCS data push into MES historians through mostly point-to-point connections today. One gateway or script at a time. Cloud systems are an afterthought on top of that. And when something goes wrong, a deviation, an exclusion, or a batch investigation, your OT, IT teams, they end up hunting through that data in multiple different places, sometimes taking days, weeks, months. And for digital or data teams, every AI or analytics project becomes a side project at that point. So in this session, I'm going to walk you through the pattern that pharma leaders are already using, that GMP-aligned Unified Namespace, powered by a real-time data backbone, and the concrete problems that those look at, and what Eli Lilly did and to land on a blueprint that you can all use. So let's zoom in on this fragmentation today and how it actually shows up. If you're in OT and automation, you see this as a maze of gateways, pulling jobs, scripts, and local or line site with its own way of getting the data out of the PLCs or SCADA or MES or historians. If you're an IT or an architect, there's no governance or single source of truth for that data. And for QA and CSV, this shows up as silo, batch data in MES, EBR, lab data and LIMS, environmental and utilities in separate systems. And to reconstruct a deviation, people have to log into multiple systems, switch them together in Excel, and under stress, like during an outage, network hiccups, or maintenance, you'll see gaps appear across all those systems. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Have you guys had this happen before? And this isn't just an integration nuisance, right? It's the foundation that has to support batch release and investigations and any AI you run on top of your manufacturing network. How many people does this look familiar to? All your systems are point-to-point integrations. So what happens if you upgrade your PLC? You're going to break your analytics application. What happens if you upgrade your analytics application? It's going to break your PLC. It's going to break your gateway, right? And these issues play out differently across multiple teams, right? The manufacturing OT teams, it's fragmented. For QA and CSV, it translates into compliance risks as we go through there. When audit trails are pieced together from multiple systems and spreadsheet, it's harder to prove that those records are complete, accurate, and tamper-proof. And for the digital teams, fragmentation is the main reason that AI gets stuck at proof of concepts. Structures and tags are different across the industry or your enterprise, right? Nobody is talking the same data language. Whoops. Oh, did I? Oh, Sorry, I didn't realize that was on there. So the root cause, no single governed real-time backbone in UNS that spans the lab, plant, and enterprise. So before we dive into the architecture, it's worth pausing on what good looks like, and this is done well. And across customers like Eli Lilly and other leading global pharmaceutical manufacturers, we see outcomes of three broad buckets. First, uptime and efficiency. One pharma manufacturer running this kind of backbone across 15 factories has achieved 99.59 of uptime, availability, zero loss on the regulated data flows. That kind of reliability translates into tens of millions of dollars in savings every year from avoided downtime and smoother operations. Second is network-wide visibility. With a consistent data foundation, you can look at the plants, across the plants, rather than at one side at a time. You can see the same KPIs and patterns, whether it's batch performance, asset health, or environmental conditions. Third is the automation of compliance work. In Lilly's case specifically, several hundred instruments across labs and manufacturing are now connected into a standard connectivity platform so that data capture, transmission into MES and LES are resulted in a single app, putting in a real-time governed backbone. And so let's look a little more closely at what they did from there. So, oops. Lilly's platform isn't just a bunch of MQTT connections underneath. How many people have heard of MQTT before? So MQTT is a publish and subscribe protocol, and that's the underlying backbone of what we're going to talk about. So getting that data to from the end client to the upstream database or the upstream system, which we'll dive into here in a minute as well. But Lilly's platform isn't just a bunch of MQTT connections. Underneath, it's a pattern that we'll all call GXP-aligned Unified Namespace. Concretely, UNS is a shared naming and data structure for your operational data. Instead, each integration inventing its own tags and payload layouts, you standardize on patterns like site, area, line, unit, and batch. So today, you might have a lab over here, and they're calling it Lab 1. You might have a lab on the other side of the world, and they might be calling it Berlin Lab, right? And so when you try to pull that data together, you're dealing with disparate data sets. One might call it temperature. One might be in Fahrenheit, one might be in Celsius, right? And so we want to make that data consistent as we go through. For OT and automation, this means your PLCs, SCADAs still control the process, so we're not trying to change the PLC or the SCADA processes here. But we want to change how that data leaves, and so that data leaves consistently. The defining model isn't just enough for GXP. You need to also runtime enforcement. So that's where the schemas and validation come into play. So the ability, once you take that data, if it is wrong, I want to connect it as it comes through the broker in this case, which we'll talk about in the next slide. But I want to take that data, make sure it's consistent. I want to make sure it's validated. And if it's not, I want to either alert somebody, I want to fix it, or I want to drop it because it's, garbage data that we don't want in our system. So we've talked a little bit about UNS and why we need that real-time backbone. The slide shows that we're not inventing a new pattern here, but this is exactly how Gartner describes a modern industrial architecture. On the left is the event-centric integration pattern that starts at the industrial edge. Device controllers and gateways, OT gateways collect data from the equipment instead of wiring every consumer together. These events are published into what is an MQTT broker you see in the center there, at the center of the architecture. From there, everything else becomes the subscriber. Subscriber comes in and grabs the data from the broker. The SCADA, MES, data hubs, and historians and higher level industrial applications all consume the same governed data from point-to-point connections. That's the exact pattern that we need to look for in a GMP environment. One control component where we can enforce the schemas, security, and reliance, and then fan that out to a trusted data source like an MES, EBR, LIMS system, analytics, and ultimately, usually AI. Gartner's guidance is clear. An MQTT broker is a key component of a modern IT/OT architecture. So in other words, if you're trying to modernize how manufacturing of lab data moves throughout your organization, an event-driven backbone with an MQTT broker at the center isn't a niche idea. It's the reference pattern for how we're recommending. For OT and automation, this means you publish once from your controllers and gateways, and you're done. For the IT, QA, and digital teams, it means you finally have a single observable, audible data plane you can plug systems into instead of rewriting those integrations every time you add a new application. And so this diagram puts everything together into a pharma context that we've kind of discussed. At the bottom, you'll see the OT and lab systems. PLCs, DCS, PCS for process control, SCADAs, HMIs, and real-time control and measurement. At the edge, you have connectivity and data operation components, gateways, connectors, modeling tools. Those translate legacy protocols into MQTT. So if you're doing things like OPC-UA, Modbus, even some legacy database, or even taking some APIs and converting those to MQTTs. And in the center of that is the HiveMQ platform, a clustered MQTT backbone providing high availability, zero loss delivery, and deep observability into the message flow. So what makes HiveMQ different compared to the free and open source brokers that are out there? We bring in reliability, security, scalability, and interoperability. So reliability, we offer a clustered architecture, which is unique in the marketplace. So all the messages are distributed, giving you the ability to have zero message loss. So if one node goes down, it automatically replicates that data to the other nodes in real time. Security, which is the ability to control who has access to the data, right? I want to make sure that my single lab, if I go back to my example, you have a lab in Berlin and you have a lab maybe here in Boston, right? I only want my Boston team to be able to publish up. I don't want my Berlin team to be able to get that lab data because they shouldn't be touching the Boston data. And then interoperability is our integrations across the board. We have what we call extensions, and those are ability to integrate with like databases, data lakes. You want to send that data up to Azure. You want to send it into AWS data lakes via like a Parquet file and put that into an AI ML system, right? We have the direct integrations to do that, fully supported, bringing enterprise support to MQTT. And to kind of wrap up, let's turn this into something concrete you can do after this event. The most effective pharma programs don't start with fix every plant and system at once. So the way we get started is we're going to pick one small line, maybe at one small single site, and then offer real-time batch monitoring and take that for that critical line. That becomes your use case for your kind of minimal viable product, MVP, if you guys are used to that term. And then, that's going to give you the signal, context, topic structure, and you can determine what your good looks like. You then introduce the real-time MQTT backbone and edge data operations that's for that scope, run it through your existing CSV process, vendor qualification, security review, et cetera, once with the explicit goal of reusing that pattern across your organization. Once it's live, you can scale horizontally, adding line after line, bringing in environmental lab data, extending it to additional sites from there. And that's what we see customers typically do. They start small and then they scale up, right? And we're here to help you with that. So I'm hopefully trying to get us a little bit back on time here, but I thank you for your time today. Our team would be happy to talk to you at our booth. We're at booth 12 out there. If you have any additional questions you want to follow up, we'll be happy to talk to you in depth about the broker. We're also doing a Challenger Peer session at 4:30. We'd love to see you there. So thank you very much.